Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Dutin. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. If you make this appointment viewing CBS News 24/7, you know what I'm about to tell you. These monitors that you see behind me are feeds coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center from all of our stations and affiliates across the country. If there's news happening out there, we're going to bring it to you live right here in Studio 55. Let's begin. President Trump is traveling right now on the first trip of his second term while he chose to survey Hurricane Helene damage in North Carolina before heading to wildfire-ravaged Southern California. And there is some relief in sight for firefighters there as winds die down and rain is in the forecast this weekend. We're on the ground in L.A. And one final round of games stands in the way of four-team Super Bowl dreams. We'll have a preview of the NFL championship matchups. This is CBS News 24/7. Happening now, President Trump is traveling to North Carolina, where he will be briefed on recovery after Hurricane Helene and survey some of the damage. The president will then head to wildfire-ravaged Los Angeles. As he left the White House, he spoke to reporters about the trip. Let's listen.
North Carolina has been a horrible thing, the way that's been allowed to fester, and we're going to get it fixed up. Should have been done months ago from the hurricane that took place almost 4 months ago. North Carolina has been treated very badly, so we're stopping there, and we're going to then go to Los Angeles and take a look at a fire that could have been put out if they let the water flow, but they didn't let the water flow.
CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is live now from the White House, where Air Force One lifted off moments ago from Washington. So, Ed, as you know, the Biden administration's response to North Carolina and the hurricane relief effort has been a sticking point for Trump throughout his campaign. So talk about what he is promising to North Carolina today and how fast, because he seems to be indicating that building up an entire town should have been done in just 4 months. What's he promising to the residents there?
Well, he's reacting to the concerns of his supporters and people in rural North Carolina, that part of the state that was affected by the hurricane, that perhaps FEMA aid didn't come as quickly as it could have. Now, you can go back and review exactly how quick the federal and state response got to that part of the state, which was slammed by this storm in unexpected ways. And it is going to take some time to rebuild the general western North Carolina, Asheville region. And so by him going today, he's going to reiterate continued federal support. Remember, he said that this week that he thinks going forward, perhaps states should cover their own expenses after disasters. I suspect governors and lawmakers from states that have been hit by this stuff, including the Speaker of the House, for example, who comes from Louisiana, that's had its fair of natural disasters, might think differently about that. We'll see how that goes. Then he goes off to California to see the wildfires, where you heard him there say, if only they let the water come from Northern California down to Southern California. No, that's not quite how it works. But he's been concerned about some environmental regulations that were put in place regarding distribution of water across that massive state and the entire West, and how it ran into state environmental concerns. It'll probably come up when he runs into California Governor Gavin Newsom later today, who says he will be on the tarmac to greet the president when he arrives. And we should also point out, he will meet also with the Democratic governor of North Carolina, who just won in November as President Trump won the Tar Heel state. And the White House tells us, and the senators confirm, that they invited Senators Alex Padilla and Adam Schiff, two big Democratic critics of the president, to fly with them on Air Force One to see things out in California. They cannot go because of big votes tonight on the Pete Hegseth confirmation in the Senate, but both signaled they appreciated the invite, Vlad.
All right, let's switch gears, Ed, and talk about that court battle brewing over the president's attempt to end birthright citizenship. He is responding to a federal judge's block that was issued yesterday on the executive order. And I don't know if you had a chance, I know you're really busy, Ed, but on CBS Mornings Plus, the Attorney General for the state of New Jersey helped break down to Tony and Adriana what the 14th Amendment to the Constitution means and how it's been interpreted over the course of our republic. But how is the president reacting to that judge blocking the decision?
Sure. This is a Reagan-appointed federal judge in Seattle who said that what the president's trying to do is unconstitutional. And the president reacted this way in the Oval Office yesterday afternoon. Take a listen.
Obviously, we'll appeal it. They put it before a certain judge in Seattle, I guess, right? And there's no surprises with that judge.
No surprises, he says. But again, it was a Reagan-appointed federal judge out in the Pacific Northwest. That one will start working its way through the courts. The New Jersey Attorney General and others across the country suing the Trump administration now, saying you can't do this. The president knew exactly what he was doing once he signed the executive order, because he and other conservative activists and administration officials have been suggesting for years that one way to potentially slow illegal immigration into the United States is to take away what is seen by many, they believe, to be the big carrot, that if you can get here and you can have children here, they'd be U.S. citizens and you'd be able to find a way to stay. Remember, though, birthright citizenship enshrined in the Constitution goes back to the founding of the country. It's not a chicken and egg thing. It's been there for a while. It's just conservatives believe, at least some of them, that if you remove that, maybe the flow will end. One other thing to point out this morning, Vlad, from here at the White House, the press secretary tweeted out a photo a little while ago of a military aircraft being loaded up with people who were being deported from the United States. The CBS News team confirms, as they're supposed to, that this was a photo taken of Fort Bliss, Texas. Our Ellie Watson over at the Pentagon has confirmed that 2 C-17 military flights flew overnight or early this morning into Guatemala, and just a little while ago, Guatemalan authorities confirmed that one flight with 79 people on board came back. What we don't know yet, what we're working to figure out, is was this one of those regularly scheduled deportation flights that the U.S. has been conducting for years, during the first Trump administration and during the Biden administration, where they go back 2, 3, 4 times a week to places like Guatemala, El Salvador, and other countries across Latin America, and where advance notice is given. What we don't know is where these immigrants rounded up and prepared for deportation during the final days of the Biden administration, and today just happened to be the day they were going, or was this something that happened since Monday? We'll work to figure that out. Normally, these flights are usually conducted on sort of commercial airline-style jets that are usually contracted out by the government and fly from places like Texas, the San Diego area, and Louisiana back to Central and South America. The difference here, as you can see in the photo, is they're using a C-17 this time. It's a different kind of aircraft, but doing the exact same kind of work that's been done for several years, sending people back. And we should point out, illegal border crossings are pretty low right now. There's been no surge since the election. And so what exactly these troops that are being sent to the border are preparing for is unclear, given that the numbers crossing are not that high. Vlad?
It's an excellent point that you make, Ed, and one wonders, had the Biden administration during its time with these regular deportations that happen, as you point out, on a consistent basis, had they, every time they happened, tweeted out a photo or blared it from the press briefing room, that perhaps that might have changed people's perceptions of immigration under the Biden-Harris administration. Because from what I can tell, and you guys will fact check me on this, but the reporting seems to be that the number of people being deported every day, which is typically a couple of hundred, has not really gone up all that much, except that we're just hearing more about it from the president and his press people.
And that's what this whole week has been about, Vlad. Demonstrating action, that things are changing, that things are happening to make it look, or to actually change the way things were done over the last 4 years. And again, so far in this situation, it doesn't look to be any different than the flights that have been ongoing in the past. The difference is the kind of aircraft used, and as you said, the fact that the White House press secretary is amplifying what's an otherwise routine piece of work by the U.S. government by tweeting it out.
All right, Ed O'Keefe, always love to have you, my friend. Thank you very much. Okay, the Senate will vote today on the confirmation of the president's embattled pick for Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth. The former Fox News host passed a procedural vote on Thursday, despite 2 Republicans joining all the Democrats in opposition. That started the clock on a maximum of 30 hours of debate, meaning the vote may not happen until this evening. CBS News political reporter Torian Small joins us now from Capitol Hill. We just heard from Trump moments ago on Hegseth's confirmation. What do you say, Tori?
Yeah, so he basically called out the usual suspects, right? These are Trump skeptics, Vlad, not necessarily in line with the party when the orthodoxy here is to placate the president. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine are the 2 defectors in this case. They came out with their reservations about Hegseth moving forward and ultimately said when the time comes, they just can't vote for them. This is what President Trump had to say about that.
Look, whatever it is, he's a good man. I don't know what's going to happen. You never know in those things, but Pete's a very, very good man. I hope he makes it. I hope he makes it. I was very surprised that Collins and Murkowski would do that. And of course, Mitch is always a no vote, I guess. It's Mitch a no vote? How about Mitch? Huh? You what? Let's see what happens.
It's interesting that he called out the former minority leader there, Mitch McConnell, even though he hasn't telegraphed where his vote lands just yet. But I will say when it came to Collins and Murkowski, they had long-standing reservations about Hegseth's ability to lead, but also this mounting controversy surrounding this confirmation here, allegations of sexual misconduct, alcohol abuse on top of other things. A myriad of allegations that I should mention Hegseth has denied, but for those two senators, that's just too much for them to get behind.
Remind Tori and our viewers, he's lost already 2 Republican votes. How many more can he lose before his nomination fails?
That margin is very small. He can only afford to lose 1 more Republican senator in order for then J.D. Vance, the vice president, to step in as the president of the Senate to cast that tie-breaking vote. If that happens, let's say Mitch McConnell, for example, decides to pull out, that means, again, that he will still be able to be approved. Now, if one other person decides to defect, his confirmation is essentially dead in the water. The only other senator that I'm watching at this point is Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa. Although she was a part of the committee that voted him out of committee to send him to the floor for a vote, she has previously been non-committal and expressed some reservations about these allegations. We'll be watching to see if she changes her vote, but so far it doesn't look like that's necessarily going to happen, Vlad.
All right, Torian Small for us on the Hill this morning. Thank you, Torian. The fast-moving wildfires in Southern California have scorched more than 50,000 acres over the last 2 weeks. Crews are still battling the 3 largest fires, but some rain this weekend might provide some relief. Our Andreas Gutierrez is live in L.A. County and joins me now to discuss. So, Andreas, talk to me about the progress on the Hughes fire over the last few hours.
Well, Vlad, the conditions out here in Passaic, California, really tell the story. 12 hours ago, you could barely breathe any of the air in. It was so acrid from that smoke that was in the air. Hazy skies, but no longer the case. Overnight, the firefighters finally pushed over the halfway point of containment. So right now, the Hughes fire stands at 56% containment as of 6 o'clock local time. This has been, all of this has been for the fact that they've been able to battle this from on the ground as well as in the air. We saw a number of helicopters hitting this reservoir that's nearby off to the distance here and getting hundreds of gallons of water and pouring it into the containment lines. The winds did prove to be a bit of a challenge yesterday, given that there was a spot fire that broke out on the western edge of the Hughes fire, burned about 100 acres, but firefighters were able to eventually get a handle of that. And again, at this point, they're just mopping up hot spots and trying to get ready for the rain that's coming in this weekend.
All right, so this rain that you're talking about, it might help quell some of the flames, but what are some of the other dangers that could come up with?
Well, it's mudslides. So right now, all this vegetation is burned, so there's nothing holding back the soil. So right now, there are specialized teams from CAL FIRE as well as the Conservation Department that are working to fill sandbags. They're also trying to assess where possible landslides could occur, and they're trying to get ahead of this. Meanwhile, homeowners are also taking some of the precautions. Take a listen.
We're putting tarps on the hillside in the back because it is vulnerable. Wind is the enemy when it comes to fire, and wind is the enemy when it comes to rain, because when you put tarps down, they become giant parachutes.
And so you also have public works crews that have been in the neighborhoods that have been impacted by the Palisades and Eaton fires, and they're working to clear out the drain basins there to make sure that there isn't any toxic debris that flows into the streets if those basins were to get overfilled with all the rainfall that's expected to happen this weekend. Not a lot, just about a half-inch of rain that Southern California is expected to see, but much needed since they haven't seen any rain here since last May.
All right, Andreas Gutierrez for us. Thank you, Andreas. Appreciate it. A second group of Hamas hostages is expected to be released tomorrow, and moments ago, Hamas provided the names of those 4 hostages to be freed. We're live in Israel with the very latest. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. following some breaking news out of the Middle East, where Hamas has just handed over the names of 4 Israeli hostages set to be released tomorrow. Joining us now for more on this is CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio, who's joining me live from Tel Aviv to talk about this. So Ramy, what are you learning?
Yeah, hey, Vlad. Yeah, breaking news just in the past couple minutes. The spokesperson for Hamas's armed wing, the Al-Qassam brigades, released that list. It is 4 Israeli female soldiers. We do have the names that Hamas has said, but we are holding on that until we get confirmation from the Prime Minister's office or other Israeli family associations here for that confirmation. But what we do know is that as Hamas had said earlier this week that they would release female Israeli soldiers, we do know that these 4 on this list are 19 or 20 years old, abducted from the Nahal Oz military base on October 7, 2023. That's just on the border with northern Gaza. If this does go ahead in terms of the exchange tomorrow, these 4 would then be exchanged for 200 Palestinian detainees currently held in Israeli prisons. Israel is also supposed to release a list of those names too, but we haven't gotten any word from that just yet. If the swap tomorrow does go ahead, though, then 89 other hostages would still be in Gaza, in Hamas's hands. But the breaking news right now, the 4 Israeli female soldiers, their names, the list has now come out from Hamas.
All right, that is some good news, Ramy. Let me talk about what we're learning from Benjamin Netanyahu's office, which says that Israeli troops will remain in southern Lebanon beyond the Sunday deadline set in a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, on that time is almost up. It was a 60-day ceasefire deal with Hezbollah signed back in November. Israel at the time, after a major conflict between them, was supposed to withdraw from southern Lebanon. Hezbollah, for its part, was supposed to withdraw north of the Litani River. That's a river about 30 miles north of the Israeli border. But now the Office of Israel's Prime Minister says that that was conditional based on Lebanon's own army coming back into force, moving back into southern Lebanon, where really it had become impotent to try to enforce this agreement. Israel is saying that since that hasn't happened, they aren't fully withdrawing just yet, too. But it is an open question. I think the question many people are wondering, will this be a return to fighting? No indication about that just as of yet. So far, also no response from Hezbollah or Lebanon's government to what the Prime Minister's office is saying about them staying in. But they're also saying that it will still be a phased withdrawal. The implication here that I'm taking from that is that there may not be a return to fighting, but they're saying, you better do this soon.
All right, Ramy Inocencio for us. Thank you, Ramy. Appreciate it. All right, don't have a teleprompter, so tell me where we're going next, guys. Okay, so there is some news out of Kyiv, and we're going to go to our Holly Williams to break it down for us. Holly.
A recent poll here in Ukraine found that just over half of its people would like to negotiate an end to the war. And that is up dramatically since the beginning of the conflict back in 2022. It's also not surprising after 3 years of brutal war and with Ukraine thought to be running short of manpower. But Ukraine is adamant that there cannot be a ceasefire without security guarantees from the international community. For instance, NATO membership, which would commit the US to defending Ukraine if it's attacked again. And that is the fear here, that negotiations with President Trump could give Vladimir Putin credibility and a face-saving way out of the current conflict. That Putin could agree to a ceasefire, use it to buy time to rebuild his depleted military, and then re-invade Ukraine at a later date. The other thing that many Ukrainians have told us here is that no matter what happens, they need American weapons to defend themselves. The bottom line is that at least some Ukrainians would like a ceasefire, but they need to see the details. Back to you.
All right, Holly Williams reporting there for us from Kyiv in Ukraine. Let's go now to our Christina Fan at WCBS New York.
Good morning. Newark is considered a sanctuary city, and its mayor is condemning the raid, calling it a violation of the Fourth Amendment. He says the city will not stand idly by while people are being unlawfully terrorized. Surveillance video shows federal immigration agents surrounding Ocean Seafood Depot in Newark on Thursday. According to the business owner, about a dozen ICE agents came in unannounced, asked to check his employee's identification, and ended up taking 3 people into custody. ICE confirmed it did conduct an operation at a worksite yesterday, but would not provide any further details. Newark Mayor Ross Baraka blasted the operation as egregious, saying in a statement, agents detained undocumented residents as well as citizens without a warrant. One of the detainees is a U.S. military veteran who suffered the indignity of having the legitimacy of his military documentation questioned. ICE says it has made 538 arrests nationwide. Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis says those include arrests in New York of an MS-13 gang member, a sex offender, and a drunk driver. From the newsroom, Christina Fan, CBS News, New York.
All right, thank you, Christina. Coming up after the break, we're going to be joined by Jake Rosen. He's going to break down what is happening with those January 6th pardons that President Trump implemented last week. A lot of criticism, but also a lot of people who are supportive. So we're going to break it down in just a few moments. Stick around. President Trump's decision to release all January 6 defendants seems to have divided some folks in his own party. His blanket pardon, essentially for 1,500 defendants, which happened just hours after he was sworn in, was something that he had campaigned on. This was a promise that he had made while he was on the campaign trail to all of his supporters, and for many people, he made good on that promise. But now some are worried that the order was perhaps too broad, and experts are warning that it could embolden other extremists. So let's go to Jake Rosen, who's standing by to talk about this. Jake, what are you hearing from those folks who may have been critical in the 72 hours since the president pardoned those individuals?
Well, Vlad, since these pardons came down a couple of days ago, we've seen at least 5 senators say that they're not happy with the way that Donald Trump did this, especially in the way that he pardoned violent criminals. Now, we know that there's been kind of this gray area since January 6th of what happens to the people who are maybe going into the Capitol and kind of caught in the storm, weren't necessarily charged with violence on police officers or destruction of property or things like that. It appears as although that this was a blanket pardon, where basically Donald Trump did what a lot of his close advisors have been telling him to do since back on the campaign trail, like you mentioned, which was to blanket pardon everyone. This is something that a lot of the farther right parts of the party, especially that kind of internet kind of conglomerate of people who are influencers and talk to the former president or now current president, are engaged in, and they lobbied for this for a very long time. People like Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Tom Tillis all came out saying that they did not believe that there should be blanket pardons for these people. There should have been a case-by-case basis of doing this. Even Mike Johnson and J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's now vice president, said that he didn't believe that there should be blanket pardons either, and Speaker Johnson echoed that as well. So certainly Donald Trump kind of spurring the advice of those closest to him, in addition to kind of embracing that further right part of the party, although, as you pointed out, this is really something that Donald Trump said he would do from day one of his administration.
So can you explain, Jake, the warnings that these pardons could actually embolden extremists, whether domestic or otherwise?
Yeah, and I think it's really important to remember that Enrique Tarrio, who led the Proud Boys, and Stuart Rhodes, who led the Oath Keepers on January 6th, and were massive leaders in what happened in that day in terms of the organized violence and chaos that we saw on Capitol Hill on January 6th, 2021. Now that they're outside of prison, they're able to potentially reorganize, and the lesson might not have been learned, right? Stuart Rhodes was sentenced to 18 years of prison in prison for his actions on that day. He barely served a fourth of that sentence, as we know, and by just a slap on the wrist and Donald Trump commuting the sentence of some people, pardoning fully others. There have only been a handful of these January 6th prisoners and people who have now been freed who have basically rejected that pardon and said that they feel like what they did that day was wrong. A lot of them, including the QAnon shaman Jacob Chansley, said he was going to go buy a gun now that he was pardoned and is no longer technically a felon, in addition to, again, just kind of these organized groups that kind of maybe took a back seat over the last couple of years others because of these intense prosecutions by the Biden DOJ. Now that the weight is off of them, we'll have to see. And experts and political violence experts have been warning that this basically gives them a green light or at least a yellow light to continue organizing and doing what they had been doing before January 6th.
All right, Jake Rosen for us from Washington. Jake, thank you very much. Thousands of people are gathering on the National Mall for the annual March for Life. The march comes as President Trump pardons nearly 24 anti-abortion rights activists. He happened to do that on Thursday. Several folks were prosecuted for blocking access to and temporarily shutting down abortion clinics. Vice President Vance will speak at today's march, and a video message from the president will be shared with the crowd. Fast-moving wildfires in Southern California have scorched more than 50,000 acres over the last 2 weeks. Firefighters were able to snuff out at least 70% of the new Laguna fire, which erupted in Ventura County yesterday, but crews are still battling the 3 largest fires. The Hughes fire in LA is 56% contained after igniting on Wednesday. The Palisades fire is about 77% contained, and the Eaton fire is almost completely out. Meanwhile, California fire crews have been working around the clock amid those dangerous gusty winds. And it's been an eye-opening experience for pilots fighting those fires from the sky. CBS News Los Angeles reporter Michelle Geely gives us a bird's-eye view.
This was by far the craziest. The level of destruction, the wind, the fire, it was something I've never seen before.
Orange County Fire Authority helicopter pilot Joey Hegseth answered the call on the Palisades fire. In his 28 years in the cockpit, Hegseth says this disaster ranks as the worst.
You got, really high winds, you got smoke, you got fire everywhere, you have structures burning everywhere, right? The saving grace was the Firehawk for us.
2 powerful Firehawks are a new addition to OCFA's firefighting fleet. Hegseth sits at the controls. Captain Blaine Morgan is one of OCFA's helicopter crew chiefs. He was above the Palisades fire shortly after it started.
I've never seen anything like this. I've been in the fire service 21 years, and it just goes to show that when the wind is blowing in the right direction and the fire gets started, there's no stopping it. Everybody knew this was coming. Everybody had upstaffed. Orange County, LA City, Cal Fire, everybody had extra resources in place, and this is still the result.
Hegseth recalls a moment in Malibu near the Pepperdine campus.
Being able to see the ember cast come off the hill, it looked like a volcano, right? And I'm like, what are we going to find up there, And they already had some strike teams protecting some structures in there, and I was able to kind of come around the ridge and get really effective drops and protect some structures. So there were some really good wins up there as far as victories go. But the devastation on the climb out and flying back to base is just it breaks your heart.
As soon as the sun sets, the crew puts on these military-grade night vision goggles. They magnify what the naked eye can't see by 6,000 times. We're talking about things like power poles, trees, and other aircraft. To try and limit stress and extreme fatigue, nighttime flights were limited to 6 hours.
I have four kids, 2 in high school and 2 in junior high, and they were at home. My parents, they're all in Southern California. Everyone was nervous, but they know this is what we sign up for. This is why we're in this section. There's a lot of high functioning individuals that make this great team up here.
Hegseth and Morgan made more than 100 water drops over Pacific Palisades and Malibu. It goes without saying, they wish they could have done more.
I'm just a boots on the ground. But the way that everybody worked together, all the agencies, all the contractors, we really gave it 110%. And that's what I would like to tell the public is like we gave it our all, 110%.
In Fullerton, Michelle Geely, KCAL News.
Let us bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the first look at the national forecast. Hey, Grant.
Hey, good morning, Vlad, and good morning to you guys at home. Look, we're starting to see some improvement across Southern California from a fire perspective. Still a concern today, an elevated fire risk. The winds have died down a little bit. We're looking at wind speeds probably between 45 to 55 mile per hour gusts. Sustained winds will be less than that. The humidity is still low today, so anything that starts or any fires that have already been burning, those could still spread pretty easily with just some of those gusty winds. But I want you to look at this. This is the forecast wind gusts as we make our way through the next 24 hours. Over the last week or so, those winds have been coming in off the land into the ocean. So that's why it's been so dry. We'll see a wind shift out of the south and west as we go into tomorrow afternoon, and that will bring in more moisture. Still gusty tomorrow, so a little concern with that. But more moisture is a good thing. One coming from the ocean, another from a storm system dropping in from the north, and that will increase the chance for showers as we go through the weekend, even into early next week. Some places across Southern California could pick up 1 to maybe even close to 1.5 inches of rainfall. There is a small concern for some landslides. We'll have to watch those conditions, but otherwise this is a huge relief to those really dry and gusty conditions that have really fueled those fires over the last several weeks. Meanwhile, we've got an Arctic chill that has really locked in some of that snow across the deep south. But look at some of these temperatures across Florida yesterday. Jacksonville only had a high temperature of 48 degrees. Tampa hit 49. That tied yesterday's record low high temperature. Orlando only got to 49 degrees. Miami saw a high temperature yesterday of 58 degrees. Those chilly conditions stay in place, but that cold Arctic air is beginning to retreat back to the north. We are tracking some snow showers across the Midwestern states. Still a little breezy across Southern California today, but that improves, like I said. Also, another round of some Arctic air will begin to move in from the north. However, most of that cold Arctic air that descended all the way to the Gulf of Mexico and the Sunshine State, that begins to lift north through the weekend. Places like Miami and Tampa will see temperatures back in the 70s, if not the 80s. We're also starting to see more normal conditions from Atlanta up into New York as we go through the weekend into early next week. Vlad, there is still a chance for some more Arctic air to arrive next week, but at least for now, the eastern half of the United States is starting to feel a little bit more like January as opposed to the North Pole, if you know what I'm saying. It's been really cold.
All right. Gotcha. Thanks, Grant. Appreciate it. One final weekend of NFL before we learn who will go head-to-head in the Super Bowl. We'll preview the conference championship round next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Just 4 teams remain in the NFL playoffs with a spot in Super Bowl 59 on the line. This weekend, the Kansas City Chiefs are back in the AFC Championship for a 7th straight season and are looking to make NFL history as the first to win 3 consecutive Super Bowls. CBS Sports NFL writer Shanna McCarriston joins me now to preview this weekend's game. So, familiar territory for the Chiefs and the Bills facing off once again in the playoffs. Who do you like?
So this is an exciting one because obviously the Chiefs are looking to make history. They're looking for that three-peat. But the Bills and Josh Allen, in the Josh Allen era, he's never been to the Super Bowl. So I think the Bills have that extra little umph. They have that motivation to really stop these Chiefs. Now, they also want some revenge because the Chiefs in the last 3 meetings in the playoffs, the Chiefs have had the last laugh and they've defeated the Bills. So I think I'm rooting for the Bills here. I know, I think they're going to win. I don't know if, the Chiefs experience is going to get to them. It's hard to bet against the Chiefs, but I think the Bills have it. Josh Allen looks different this year.
All right, let me ask you about the NFC East Division showdown with the championship game. We're talking the Eagles and the Commanders. They're facing off. They both have incredibly high-powered offenses. So how much of a factor will defense be in deciding who wins this game?
Yeah, so I think with Jaden Daniels, he's a rookie, but you would never know it from watching him play. The Eagles need to shut down his confidence a little bit. It's not going to be easy to do, but that defense needs to respond. Also, teams with no turnovers have fared significantly better this playoffs than those who even have 1 turnover. So it seems obvious, but they cannot turn the ball over. The Commanders also put up 45 points last week against the Lions. The Eagles cannot allow them to do that. And this is an exciting matchup because it's 2 NFC East teams. This is only the 5th time the NFC Championship game has been between 2 NFC East teams. And Jaden Daniels has the chance to be the first rookie quarterback to play in the Super Bowl. So I think he's just on a run. He has that confidence of, I've already exceeded expectations, so let me go out and sling it. And I think also on the Eagles side, Jalen Hurts, he was on the injury report with a knee injury. He was limited in practice on Wednesday and was a full participant on Thursday. But if he is limited in any way and that option for him to scramble is gone, the Commanders' defense can take advantage of that. And I think that could be a factor.
And Shanna, are you excited about Kendrick Lamar?
I am, and I think the special guest is going to be amazing. I'm very sad that there's only 2 weekends of football left. I'm trying to deal with that right now. I don't know what I'm going to do on Sundays, after a couple weeks from now, but I'm excited. The Super Bowl is just such an exciting time. It's the commercials, it's the halftime show. It's not just about the game, but I think whoever makes it, these 4 teams are going to give us an incredible Super Bowl.
Do you think it's going to be Taylor Swift?
I'm not sure. And what if she comes, even if the Chiefs aren't in it? Is there that chance here?
That'd be amazing.
I know she'll be there this weekend at Arrowhead. The Chiefs have the home field there, and I think she has a permanent seat, and that's sweet. But I don't know. I don't know if she's if they're feeling 22.
Exactly. All right, Shana McHarrison, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
So we're just talking about Kendrick Lamar. He made headlines when he announced a special guest who's going to join him during the Super Bowl halftime show. Take a look at this.
Now, I've been thinking about a guest performance.
Yep, that is SZA dumping the sports drink on Kendrick Lamar. The Kill Bill singer will be a guest performer during the game on February 9th. The NFL did not release any more details about the performance. And as you just heard me asking Shanna, maybe another special guest, maybe the person who sits in that Kansas City Chiefs suite will make her way down to the field. I don't know. We'll find out on Super Bowl Sunday. Meanwhile, this morning, the National Zoo in Washington is finally introducing its new 3-year-old giant pandas to the public. They're part of a conservation program and a historic partnership between the U.S. and China going back half a century. Caitlin Huey-Burns is at the zoo with more.
Pandas are back in our nation's capital. These furry phenoms have been the biggest draw at the National Zoo for more than 50 years. Dating back to 1972, after President Richard Nixon and First Lady Pat Nixon made a historic trip to China. Shortly after, China gifted 2 giant pandas to the United States to celebrate the country's improving ties.
I think pandemonium is going to break out right here at the zoo.
But what began as an act of diplomacy has evolved into a scientific partnership between the U.S. and China, bringing together researchers and conservationists from around the world in an effort to save the dwindling number of wild pandas worldwide. These adorable animals have attracted millions of visitors to the National Zoo, ranging from first families to school field trips, helping the pandas celebrate milestones big and small. But the panda house at the National Zoo has been empty for more than a year after Tian Tian, Mei Zhang, and Zhao Zhizhi were sent back to China in November 2023, when a previous agreement between the U.S. and China expired.
It's been a sad day. It's been a sad week.
Luckily, that heartbreak was short-lived.
It's official. The pandas are coming back to D.C.
Last May, the Smithsonian and the China Wildlife Conservation Association announced a new agreement to bring pandas back to Washington for at least the next decade.
We've been waiting for this for a really long time.
The zoo's newest occupants, Bao Li and Xing Bao, arrived on a very special FedEx plane in October. And after taking a few months to settle in, including frolicking in the snow, they are finally ready to make their public debut.
All right, we've got much more news ahead and a final look at the weekend forecast. Stick with us. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following for you this morning. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is asking Congress to reimburse his state for the billions of dollars spent on border security during the Biden administration. Abbott says Texas spent more than $11 billion to secure the border and to launch multiple state agencies in collaboration with the National Guard. Sources tell CBS News the Nashville school shooter and a girl accused of another school shooting in Wisconsin last month followed each other on social media. Authorities say the attacker killed a 16-year-old girl and wounded another student before taking his own life. He fired 10 shots in just 17 seconds. Investigators say they found racist, far-right, and anti-Semitic documents online, and they believe the shooter wrote them. President Trump ordered any remaining files related to the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to be released. His executive order also includes the release of documents pertaining to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, Officials have 45 days to present, and they plan to release all the RFK and MLK files, and just 15 days to come up with a plan to release the JFK files. A stunner at the Australian Open, Novak Djokovic pulled out of his semifinal match against Alexander Zverev due to an injury. Moments later, losing a first-set tiebreaker, Djokovic walked to the set to concede the match. Some of the fans booed him. Djokovic hurt his leg during the quarterfinal match against Carlos Alcaraz. He was going after a record 25th Grand Slam title. Philadelphia may be thousands of miles away from the wildfires in Los Angeles, but the disaster hit close to the hearts of students at one local elementary school. CBS News Philadelphia reporter Aziza Schuler shares how the kids stepped up to support the firefighters on the front lines.
Few things are as adorable as hearing 6- and 7-year-olds read aloud messages to their heroes.
You are brave, strong, helpful.
When students at Franklin Town Elementary learned of the heroic efforts of the LA Fire Department battling the catastrophic wildfires, they felt inspired to share their appreciation by handwriting letters packed with admiration.
Thank you for saving people in California. You are kind, helpful, and you are a hero.
And some curiosity.
How tall are the ladders?
Good job. Wednesday, members of the Philadelphia Fire Department visited the classroom and helped the little ones prepare their heartwarming letters for mailing.
Directly to the Chief of Police of the Huntington Beach Fire Department in California, Los Angeles County, and he said that he will give them personally to the firefighters on the front line.
Your acts of kindness and sympathy letters will hopefully give some comfort to the people who are affected.
While the project taught students a bit about geography and natural disasters, teacher Holly Green says it was truly a lesson of compassion.
It's really important, even though we think we can't do a lot to help, we still say thank you and we help where we can.
Aziza Schuler, CBS News, Philadelphia.
Let's stay in Philly and bring CBS Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the final look at the national forecast. Hey, Grant.
Hey, Vlad, we're going to take you right back out to California, where we're still keeping a close eye on those conditions across Southern California. We're still gusty conditions today. The humidity is low, but the moisture begins to return with more of an onshore flow. And then we see some rain arrive over the weekend. Some places could pick up 1 inch to 1.5 inches, but very beneficial rainfall to all those fire-stricken areas across Southern California. Looking ahead to the rest of the country, still cold across the north end into the Midwestern states, watching some snow dropping in from the north through the northern tier states into the Great Lakes states. We will actually begin to see some moderating temperatures as we go through the weekend. The last week, we've had this Arctic air just locked into the eastern 2/3 of the United States, which started with all the snow across the deep south. So that will give us some melting with all that snow, so improved conditions there. As we go into Sunday, watching rain across southern Texas. That will move across the Gulf states. Meanwhile, more snow across the Great Lakes. But overall, we're seeing at least more normal conditions over the Northeast. And then again, watching that rain across Southern California as we head into early next week. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Grant, thank you very much. We'll see you next week. That does it for me, folks, but stay right where you are. After the break, Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco with all the news breaking from coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.